So thank you for inviting me. Thank Joe, and I thank you all for creating this space for me to be here. I really honor that. And I found it interesting when Joe was, when Joe asked me to do this, I was excited about the idea of doing something that had to do with everyday Dharma in your life. And one of my teachers, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, talks about that all the time. That it's okay, you can go off into a cave and you can meditate and you can have these realizations, I've seen that many times and I've experienced that myself, where I've had these great moments in centers or monasteries, and then get back into my car and the first red light, it's like, and I thought, okay, well there goes my whole practice. So I really get the idea of bringing it into your everyday life. And Lama Zopa says every step you take and every breath you take can be a Dharma practice. So I really appreciate the theme of the series. And I thought it was very funny when Joe was reading the four themes, politics, love, work, and fear. It's like, I didn't get the sexy one. Then you get the cool one. And that's okay, because I think for me, in everyday life, yes, politics, certainly recently, politics and love and work are important parts of our lives. Yet there's still something that's always hanging around with us at every moment in our lives. For most of us, if there's someone here who isn't, then I will sit there and you come here and you take over, and that's fear. And so I've thought a lot about that. I'm here sitting with a sangha, with a Buddhist sangha, and I'm talking about the concept of, does anybody really, have any practice or experience with the concept of emptiness in Buddhism? I mean, that's a basic principle. It's certainly in the wisdom wing, and in some ways you can say that Buddhism is broken up into two wings. You have the wisdom wing and the compassion wing, or the loving kindness wing, and that the Buddha said you can't practice one without the other, like a bird can't fly with one wing. That as a Buddhist or someone who's practicing Buddhism, you have to really work on wisdom, understanding the true nature of reality. At the same time, you have to work on loving kindness and on compassion. And that is the base, one way of looking at the path. So I'm sitting here, and my experience is I've been practicing now full-time, I would say, Tibetan Buddhism. That's my main practice for almost 15 years. And my teacher, Geshe Sonam Gyaltsen, I met in Holland in a center. I was living there, and he's been my teacher since. And I'm associated with a center here, Sechen Ling. Does anybody know that center?
We've had Rabina Corden.
Oh, Rabina, she's great.
Choki.
And Choki.
Has been here, so.
They're great. They're great speakers. Rabina's a trip.
Yeah, she is a trip.
She tells you the way it is. So that center's associated with the center I was associated with, and I help out there. I fill in sometimes with the walk-in meditation class, and I'm working with her project, the Liberation Prison Project, going to prisons and working with prisoners. And I love it. And yet, I would never really say that I'm a qualified teacher. So I'm going to be talking to you about fear. I'm going to be talking to you about emptiness, which is one of the higher philosophy, which is a higher philosophy in Buddhism, and really don't feel like I'm qualified when I think of other teachers. So what gives me the courage to sit here and talk about it is I do feel like I'm qualified. I'm an expert in fear. I've been doing it for a long time, and I can do it really well. And I grew up in New York City and grew up on the streets, and I can go on a whole long list of how fear has played a role in my life. And it's always been interesting to me. I've always been fascinated by this idea. So when Joe asked me to do this, I was actually preparing for a lecture or talk that I was giving at the Gay Buddhist Fellowship to talk about respectful confrontation, this work I'm doing. And the basis of that work is basically it's developing the skills and the courage to live your life in its authenticity, to live your authentic self, to have the skills and the courage to do that. And I love that. I love that for myself, and I love doing that with other people. And in the middle of thinking about how I wanted to prepare for that, I started getting this idea of one of the main reasons, at least for myself, that I'm not always living my authentic self or being in my authenticity is the role that fear plays in my life, or how I see myself as limited. And that started me thinking, wow, it's amazing how powerful fear can be, even though it's not something you can grab onto. And I'm sure does anybody here experience fear ever? So,
now.
would anybody like to just have it surgically removed permanently? So, and because we can't, because it's nebulous, it's not something we can hold on to. Because if we could, especially in this day and age, we'd all have it removed immediately. If we could get it tucked or we can get it Botoxed or whatever, it'd be gone instantly. So because it's not that concrete, it's harder to grab onto. And that's been kind of like what I've been exploring, is this idea of what is it about? And then this idea of using the concept of emptiness as a way of, in a sense, taking away some of the power around fear. And I remember as a young boy something very powerful, I'll never forget it, of lying in bed in the dark, late at night, and hearing a thud in the closet. Perfect timing. Ooh, let's get into the covers. And I was petrified. There was tears coming down my eyes from the fear. And I lie there in fear all night, certain that there was someone in there that was going to come and hurt me. And I didn't sleep that night. And when the daytime came and I was up, I had the courage to go into the closet and look and saw that a shoe fell. And that, I didn't think about it then, but since then I've thought about it, is that that's really that's our relationship with fear. That we have these thuds in the night that we immediately get a reaction to, and we hold on to it. And because we don't examine it, because that night I could have just mustered up the courage, opened up the door, seen the shoe, gone back to bed, had a good night's sleep, but I didn't. And that got me on this whole exploration of what is that about. You know what I'm saying with that? So, in this exploration of this, there was I noticed that suddenly His Holiness the Dalai Lama was doing a lot of talks a few years ago where he was talking a lot about self-confidence. And I found that odd for a Tibetan mystic or Tibetan teacher to be talking about self-confidence. And I realized that what he was doing is really getting to the heart of certainly one of Western society's ailments, which is a lack of self-confidence. And that really thinking it is not possible for us to become and live out our true potential if we are lacking a certain level of self-confidence. And certainly in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, and certainly in the Mahayana Tibetan Buddhist tradition, it's the goal to actually become a Buddha, to be of service and benefit to all beings. So that's pretty high stuff. That's a pretty big goal, to actually want to be a Buddha. And so what the Dalai Lama, I think, is what he's saying is that if you don't have the confidence to know that you can become a Buddha, then you won't become a Buddha. So work on your confidence. And that's also this idea of working on your fear, or with a limitation. And I want to just talk a little bit about, I'll actually read the quote that he said. With the realization of one's potential and the self-confidence in one's ability, one can build a better world. So I want to just talk a little bit about this concept of what emptiness is, and then take a look at how fear plays a role in our lives, and how we can, maybe overcome some of that. In a sense, that's the essence of martial arts. I work a lot with martial arts, is people think that martial arts is about wanting to be a fighter so that you can hurt people, in a sense. But really, the true essence of martial arts, does anybody here do martial arts? Any kind of martial arts? What kind of martial arts do you do?
Taekwondo.
Cool. Anybody else?
Used to do Krav Maga.
Say that again?
Krav Maga, Israeli self-defense.
Oh, cool. Oh, that must be intense. Love to see that. But the basic premise of martial arts wasn't to really learn to be a fighter. You became a fighter, but the point of it was to understand. It was a spiritual practice.